You want to start us off with a big old sip?
Ow, my nose.
Welcome back to Soap, sort of a podcast. I'm your host, Beware. I go by Mikey, and with me today I have my co-hosts, Hudson and Robbie. Say hello, guys.
Hello, guys.
We did it. We're all back together again.
Yeah, it's all three of us, and this is the second week in a row we're recording. That's not for you, obviously, Robbie.
Yeah, sorry.
Shaking his head.
Oh,
in the
I was
corner.
shaking my head like I can't believe it.
Oh, all right. Well,
We've done it before, but not in person.
that's true. Yeah, there was the whole digital aspect. But before we get going, how are your days? How was your week? How have you been?
I have Sour Patch Kids.
I think that answers the question for Robbie. And because I'm sitting next to Robbie and also have Sour Patch Kids, it
You want a
does
Sour
answer
Patch
the
Kid?
question. I would love a Sour Patch Kid. Oh, thank you.
Here you go.
I have a Sour Patch
See,
Kid.
that's only possible when we're in person
Yeah,
and not
right?
recording
You
virtually.
have all just seen Robbie hand me a Sour Patch Kid.
To our viewers at home
What
who are only listening and can't see, I can attest that in fact I did see.
What if
the
we
passage.
like in the video like have like a little Sour Patch Kid get transferred from like my pixel art avatar to Hudson's pixel art avatar?
That sounds great. Do you want to do that?
I'll do it.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
you
Well,
can do
we've
it.
One of
decided
us
that
will
it's
do
not my responsibility, and that's all
That's
that
all
matters.
that matters. I'm doing pretty great. I watched a live album for my favorite band, Tesseract,
Okay.
and now Robbie and I
They're
are
your
gonna go
favorite
see
band?
it. At this point, yeah, they've been
Oh,
like
nice.
Saunders is one of my favorite albums. It's like
Okay.
Sunlux and Tesseract, and then
Yeah, I
Tesseract
thought it was
dropped their
Sunlux.
new single, and I was like, damn,
I still need to listen to that.
it's really good. It's 11 minutes long, really good.
One of you put that in the Discord. Yeah.
It was me.
And you were both freaking out about it, and I tried to listen to it. Not my cup of
No.
joe, not my cup of tea.
There are other songs by them that you would actually like.
So we were talking about getting Mikey into metal music, and we had some sort of long drive where it was just the two of us. I don't know if like we were going to your parents' house or something, but I played an album by Starset. This was like before, this was like, very early on. And then I did play you a song by Tesseract, and I was surprised because you liked it. This was before Sonder came out.
Oh, okay.
This was like, must have been like 2018, like back in college.
Well, one of the things we did mention last time is that when we ended the podcast previously, we were like, all right, I'm going to try to get into metal music. You're going to get into anime. What were you going to get into? Comics, right? Was it? No, maybe not.
No, wait, no. I think the idea was Mikey was going to get Hudson into anime. Hudson was going to get the rest of us into D&D, and then me and Hudson were going to get you into...
Is that what we decided on?
No, because me playing D&D with you was like a 30 minutes before the session accident.
Which is a story we're, again, not going to tell today.
Not going to tell
in
right
the future.
now. But I thought it was comics. Or was it power scaling? What was it? It was something.
Only there were like some way that we could have recorded that conversation.
Yeah, and
we
like
could
put it up
reference
on the internet.
Yeah, where other people
All right,
could
drop
also
it in the
reference
comments below, please.
Yes,
you viewers, do the work for us.
Yes.
How
please,
about
please do.
I mean, it would be easy enough to look up, but what if we just like find the associated clip and then put it there, but like we record the rest of it not knowing what it actually was?
We could totally do that. It's fine.
Sure.
I will
So
say.
here's the thing that I'm upset by. That might actually be the case, because if we find out it's comics, then that means our attempt to get Robbie into comics involved us going to see Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, and then we gave up.
That's a pretty good reason to give up. That
movie
sucked ass. Anyway, the reason I brought this up was because my taste in music, I feel like, has evolved. I can deal with a lot more, actually enjoy musics that have like more screaming. I don't know what the technical term is.
It's
harsh vocals.
Well,
vocals.
different
use,
people.
but
Some people just say screaming. Some people
Yeah.
say harsh vocals. Some people say unclean, like clean
unclean
and unclean.
vocals. Yeah,
Because like somebody's the clean vocalist and somebody's the
unclean vocalist.
Unclean sounds like biblical play. That's not how I would personally
It's
describe
like
it.
this singer's Catholic. This one is not.
No, it's like you have like a band that's like a cult, and then you have like a designated like ceremonially clean and ceremonially unclean singer, and like that has to do with like whatever. Like what if they did that with Sleep Token,
Oh,
where like you had like clean vessel and unclean vessel,
Dude,
and he wears different costumes.
I know people eat that shit up. I think that's stupid as fuck. Sleep Token is a band that has what's probably objectively a cool gimmick, where they're like,
Oh, can I wait? I think I can explain the lore the best.
go for it. I do know the lore, but go for it.
Oh, if you know it better than I do.
I don't
then-
think I know it better than
Okay.
you because I thought it was dumb.
So the idea is there are 5 people in this band. So there's the singer Vessel, and then the rest of the members of the band just have numbers as their names.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like Slipknot, but like people know who the members of Slipknot are. They're a band from the UK, and their identity is a secret. The premise is that there was this like ancient like eldritch god that came to him in a dream and basically said like if you like worship me or spend if you make music about me or whatever, I'll like give you success.
Okay.
And no human language can actually like render the name of this god, but the closest thing in English is sleep. And so that's why the
Sleep
band is
Token.
called Sleep Token.
Okay.
JD, the drummer of my band, his drumming teacher is the drummer from Sleep Token.
Wow.
So he knows the identity. He will not, the secret is safe with him.
That's the thing that's cool about it. I
Yeah.
don't love the lore is kind of cool. I don't love about it is like people will be like, I'm going to worship when they talk about going to their shows, which I
Yeah.
was like, I'm kind of over it. But one of the things that is really cool is a lot of people know who these guys are. It's just generally agreed upon that you're going to shut up about it.
Yeah,
like-
that makes sense.
Someone in your band knows who they are and has not
Right.
told you.
And also like
It's really cool.
they like hang out with fans and like VIP too. So like they will regularly interact with their fans and stuff, and they have like social media accounts and stuff.
Well, wait,
But
wait. Sorry, really quick.
Yeah,
Is it that you just don't know their names, or you don't even see like their faces?
you don't see their faces.
Oh, okay.
They
That's a
have-
bigger
So they
deal.
all wear masks.
That's a bigger deal. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
They're actually very cool.
yeah, and then they hang out with their fans. I don't know if like some fans tried to like rip one of their masks off. I'm sure that they'll get like fucking taken away by security.
I don't think they need to be. I think the fans would do it. Like
Yeah,
if they-
probably.
If someone tried to
Probably.
rip the mask off, I don't think anyone would want anything to do with
But
it.
yeah, so like obviously people at like the record label know who they are, or any producers that they've worked with, but yeah, nobody knows who they are, and so everybody's been able to be tight-lipped about it, which
Well, it
is pretty
sounds like
dope.
there's obviously an element of like these people want their privacy, but also like it's fun. It's more fun that way when people don't know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So to spoil it, you'd have to just be an asshole who
Yeah,
doesn't
because like
fun.
with Starset is another concept band where their thing is like we're part of the Starset society, and we're trying to raise awareness about this thing called the signal that's going to happen at some point in the future. But like the singer of the band is like just this dude named Dustin who he'll tell you that, he got like fired from his job, and then, but it's just like, he's like, yeah, this is just like a fictional thing that, we have like a story and stuff. But like with Sleep Token, it's like same thing with like Coheed and Cambria, not as much because it's more like the music is
Yeah.
loosely connected to
And
this
there are
comic
like
book series.
concept albums and
Yeah.
concept thing, but Sleep Token is like,
Yeah, they like
100%.
nobody has been like, yeah, this is this is how I came up with the idea or anything
No.
like that. It's all just
for all intents, like Sleep the God is a real thing. One might even say he's a real villain.
that's a weird word to emphasize. I don't know why you would do that.
Yeah, it's almost like you're trying to like segue into something.
Speaking of which.
So did you know that today our podcast episode is talking about villains?
I don't know what you guys are talking about. To get into today's topic, I I think we'll have some really interesting perspectives on this. But for me to introduce it for the first time, even though none of you have heard about it, I would like to get into character. So if you'll just give me a moment.
All right.
I fucking hate you guys. You're both stupid and ugly, and you waste your time caring about the environment and the struggles of the disenfranchised and justice, but I don't
Zoning
care.
laws.
I don't care about any of that dumb bullshit because I'm nefarious. I'm a scoundrel. I kick puppies and I steal from grandmas. I steal from poor, innocent, retired, disabled grandmas. And I take that money and I give it to international mega corporations just for the kicks.
How could you?
Just to get my rocks off. And one time, I wore my socks in the shower. Not that that's illegal, but it's definitely too far.
He can't keep getting away with this.
And that's what I wanted to talk about. Why am I telling you all this? Because every good villain needs a monologue, and that's today's topic. We are going to be talking.
You're right. You guessed it. Monologues.
We should do a monologue one.
No, we're talking about.
I mean, we're talking fierce fiends, nasty ne'er-do-wells, creeping criminals.
We're talking about villains today.
Yeah,
Antagonists,
yeah.
if
So,
you will.
I don't know who that scary guy was that was just in here that did that weird monologue. But we're gonna be talking about
Yo, somebody just came in here, took Mikey's mic, and then he just like went into like stasis for like 2 minutes. And then this person like delivered like the most terrifying monologue I've ever heard in my life. I just shat my pants.
I can't believe
And
Nina
then
didn't tell us her brother was
he
in town.
disappeared. And now Mikey's back.
it's so
Are you
terrifying.
okay?
That was really scary. Everything went black and I'm back and you guys have both pissed and shit and cummed your pants and I don't know what to do. I'm really terrified. That's so really scared.
I think
sorry,
I
was
think
that
I
as
want
heavy
to
as
break.
hard?
Can we just bring it back? Let's break down our experience.
I call it moose
Yeah.
tracks.
and talk about fucking.
This is kind of gross. You can cut that.
Oh, I don't like this.
All right, what were you?
I was trying to like, what's that ice cream flavor that's like chocolate and it
I
has
really
the-
like moose tracks. You know what I mean?
Anyways, so we're talking about villains. Couple things. One, send me that track so I can like actually put it underneath it and not like.
Oh, I wanted it to
have
be
you just-
shitty, but okay.
In the beginning, I thought it was like a shitty MIDI version of "Bring Me to Life" by Evanescence.
That would have been
Does
really
it have the
funny.
piano?
No, it was specifically copyright free creepy villain music. I googled it on YouTube and clicked the second link. So
That's some real dedication.
yeah, because I
Clicking
didn't
the
want
second link.
Waiting for a Prime number to show up.
Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna talk about some villains, good ones, bad ones, what we like about them, what makes them tick. I can go first, or you guys can go first, whichever you prefer.
Okay. First things first. This is an important clarification that might sound stupid. Are we talking about villains or antagonists?
Villains.
Okay.
So they gotta be evil. They
So
can't
the difference between like a villain and an antagonist is like the villain is someone who is usually an antagonist and also not a good person or evil, versus an antagonist can be a like force or a person that isn't necessarily bad but is operating against the person.
I would say, put as simply as possible, a villain does bad things for bad reasons, and they can be a protagonist or an antagonist. Because if someone
Interesting.
does bad things for good reasons, they're technically an anti-villain. People don't really use that term, but it's the opposite of an anti-hero.
Oh, that's going to complicate things.
Either way, people who do bad things, super simple, right? In a story, it's a villain. Because I have some villain antagonists that I really like. I have some villain protagonists that I want to talk about that I really like. So
I'm curious how this goes because I think a lot of the villains that I like and want to talk about might fall into the anti-villain category if that's the definition you're using. But we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it over
That's
time.
interesting.
First unequivocal villain that we all know about that is one of my favorite villains. I think he's the most iconic villain of the 20th century and probably before the Joker would be the most iconic villain of the 21st. Darth Vader.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, big time.
Super iconic, and as bad as the prequels were objectively, that in the Clone Wars, fleshing out his backstory, if you just explained it to someone who had never seen Star Wars and gave you his character arc and actually put it well, that would be blowing someone away. I mean, like this random guy who grew up as a slave, you know, one of the most powerful people, joins this organization you're supposed to join as a kid, and is just this regular ass guy tormented by all these demons and these horrible things that have happened to him, and eventually gets kind of driven mad by that and love and turns evil only to redeem at the last moment. Everything about that, the suit, the height, the breathing is just iconic and really fucking well done.
Oh, yeah. I have a list here.
Did you practice that beforehand?
No.
Oh wow, that was very articulate.
Thank you.
I have a list here of good villains and bad villains. Number one on the good villains was Darth Vader.
I was thinking about this earlier. Who's my favorite villain? And I wanted to not be a basic bitch, but he's just everything about that character. He fits so much of the iconic, like the iconography of like Voldemort and Sauron. He hits all of that, but his just turning to the light side and having there be another just purely
Right.
like, I am the evil guy enemy.
Like I
just elevates.
So the other thing is, as you're talking about Darth Vader, it makes me think of a lot of things that we take for granted now that are kind of villain tropes that I'm not sure if I can come up with an example that predates Darth Vader of those things.
Like what?
So the two things that I can think of after I burp.
Into the mic, please.
There we go.
So the two things that I can think of is number one, like you said, turning back to the light side. I think that there are examples of villains becoming good again, but the idea of Darth Vader being such a like monolithic, like, you know, badass evil person, especially the way that Star Wars sort of like it's like sort of spiritual ancestors are the like, you know, Pulp Fiction,
Right.
like Flash Gordon type things where you have kind of like a villain of the week. And so having your villain be redeemed, and actually like it's Darth Vader who actually does throw the Emperor over the ledge. Spoiler alert. It's not Luke.
Yeah.
It's not Luke, you know, doing the final thing that saves the day. That's the first thing. The second thing is visually, we don't see Darth Vader's face until the very end.
Yeah, and something about that's fascinating because at the very end when we see his face, he is this like
Right.
kind of pathetic old man. Like he
And
looks
ghoulish.
just-
Yeah.
But he looks foolish.
horrible.
And also, so specifically, we don't see his face until the very end, but also we see his face. Usually you don't have like, I don't think that like reveals like that were very common like in cinema before the Star Wars trilogy. I think now it's like you kind of have a thing where you like tease a villain, but
Yeah, like Sauron doesn't take his mask off.
yeah, exactly. Like Sauron doesn't take his, you don't see what Sauron like actually looks like. It's kind of assumed that he doesn't have like a form. And also think about what it would have been like to watch the Star Wars movies as they came out, where Star Wars is
Yeah.
just kind of like this bad guy in the first episode. They developed a lot for Empire.
Yeah.
And one of the things is like in Empire, there's that one thing where he's in his like, you know, sleeping meditation chamber,
In Empire,
and you see the back of his
Just
head
the
is
back.
like,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And it's like watching that in like 1980 has got to be like, oh my gosh. Because also like, you know, Ben's ghost has the conversation with Luke, like he's more machine than man. It's like, okay, well, how much more machine is he than man? You don't know until you finally.
There's a mystery. There's a gravitas. Yeah.
And it kind of keeps the mystery. He chops off one arm and it's that arm is mechanical. My arm is also mechanical. Before episode 3, how much of this guy is mechanical? Because
Right.
for all we know, it could be literally just his head.
Yeah, it could be like a RoboCop situation where
Yeah.
it's like you got his heart and his brain and his face and nothing
But
else.
even like the breathing, like it could be, if you like the helmet and the breathing, it could honestly now if it came out be looked at as kind of stupid looking, but it's so iconic looking. And the costume department
So, I was like really into Star Wars as all like every boy has a Star Wars phase. I'm sure. I wanted to be Darth Vader for Halloween one year.
Oh, okay, for Halloween.
Yeah, and then I was really upset because it was like one of those cheap Party City Darth Vader costumes, and it just had like a plastic, like 2-dimensional silhouette of Darth Vader's mask that you like. There was a rubber strap that you like put on, and it was really shitty, and I was so upset because it's like people are gonna look at me from behind and not think that I'm not Darth and realize that I'm not Darth Vader, right? Well, it was that, and it was also just like, you know, autism and and wanting to have like a realistic like
I totally
costume,
get that.
you know?
Yeah.
For all of our viewers, Robbie is actually on spectrum and is able to make that joke. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I was gonna say something like
He's our token autist,
stop.
so we can all make that
There
joke.
we go. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Things are getting a bit too respectful.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, so I had this costume, right? At Walmart, there was a Darth Vader voice changer helmet. I don't know if you guys remember this. It was like a toy that
Yes!
was like okay.
Yes.
So I wanted this shit so bad because not only was it a complete Darth Vader helmet that like, you know, you put over your entire face, but it also had like the control panel that was just sort of like, you know, inked onto my costume. Okay. And so it was like, holy shit, if I get this, I'll have like a full Darth Vader costume. And it also fucking changes my voice. And I wanted it so bad, but it was $20.
Oh no.
So what I was gonna ask as you're describing that is, was it like a kid's toy? Or was it like designed for the size of an adult? And if you got it, it would be way too big.
It was
But it's
$20.
It's a kid's toy. Yeah, that answered my question. Which
I saved up for so long for that fucking helmet, but I got it in the end.
wow.
And when I
congratulations.
got it, I was like, fucking every Thursday is going to be Star Wars Day. And I'm going to come to school in the full costume every Thursday because I finally have my helmet and I can finally be Darth Vader. The voice changer didn't work as well as I thought that it would. It didn't actually make me sound, because I was like, your powers are weak. And then it went like, your powers are weak. And I didn't really turn my like, you know, 8-year-old voice into Darth Vader. You know, I wasn't into Darth Vader for much longer after that, but
Damn.
that is my Darth Vader story.
A lot of kids dress up as Darth Vader, and a lot of adults dress up as Darth Vader for kids.
Yeah.
Right? I haven't seen a whole lot of adults just dress up as
I
Darth
haven't
Vader.
seen a lot of kids dressing up as Darth Vader for adults. Yeah, that is weird.
All right, well, fuck off. The point is, like, I think that's interesting because you don't, I mean, like, a lot of villains like the Joker, most parents probably wouldn't let their kids dress up as that. But Darth Vader is like a villain who does some pretty awful stuff. But
Joker would probably be okay if it was like comic book Joker.
I don't see a whole lot of kids with like Dark Knight Joker paint on their faces.
Well, that's
you
Dark
know?
Knight Joker, because
Right,
I think
but-
Dark Knight is a less kids-friendly movie.
Yeah,
I
villain,
think maybe
right?
that's
Even
the
though it's another
implication.
iconic villain. But there is something interesting about Darth Vader as like, what are some of the things he does that are super villainous and are like, oh, holy wow. Because I don't think most of them are diabolically evil, right? Like the most evil thing that happens in the fourth one is like Grand Moff Tarkin blows up Leia's planet. That's not Darth Vader. So he somehow, like, the most evil actions committed, either he does seemingly off screen, like he kind of tortures Leia and Han, but that's more off screen. But he still commands this guy is evil,
So
kind of
that's-
a presence.
That's I think the most evil thing that Vader specifically does is he kills one of his own men for being annoying. Doesn't he just force choke that guy? Or does he not actually die?
One
I
of
don't
the
remember.
Moffs, I think.
One
or
of the Moffs. Does he kill one of the
officers.
Moffs?
It's not one of them. The guy he kills is called Admiral Ozzel. And he doesn't kill him for being annoying. He kills him for being incompetent.
Okay.
He has this utter contempt for failure.
I will say this, that you mentioning, you know, the level of evil that he did made me want to get into something that I wanted to get into later, which is redemptions. Villain redemptions, okay? Here's the thing. it tends to go one way nowadays. It's cliche and I don't like it. It might have started with Star Wars, right? Whereas like you have this seriously evil villain.
Yes.
He's super evil. You redeem him in the last movie and then he dies as soon as he's redeemed.
Yeah.
Or he dies redeeming himself, right? That's not terrible necessarily, but it just happens so frequently now that these characters don't get to actually live and deal with the consequences of their actions.
Yes, and I also think some redemptions, the redemption should be planted. Generally.
Yes. Yeah.
So for example, we're talking about Darth Vader like killing somebody. The first kind of hint that they pop in Empire Strikes Back that Darth Vader is going to be redeemed comes from he kills 2 guys for their incompetence. He has a conversation with Luke after he chops off his arm like telepathically. Then one of his, they jump to hyperspace after one of his admirals has just promised for this to happen. And the admiral goes up to this and explains that they failed. And Darth Vader says, okay, and just leaves. Doesn't kill the guy.
Oh, shit.
That's something I never really picked up on the first time I watched it, but he is planted. He has killed literally everyone who was fucked up.
But after interacting
really
with Luke a little
interesting.
bit.
That's the guy. He doesn't.
I am positive that George Lucas did not come up with that because that's too.
We could do a whole, honestly, we should. There's a book called The Secret History of Star Wars, which goes into that.
Oh, there's so much interesting.
That'd be
shit.
a really good podcast on it.
But the fact is, they accidentally just made the coolest villain ever. Kind of.
So,
right?
okay.
Like his iconography, the stuff he does in 4, they did it all. But that whole redemption, thing, I don't think they intended to make him Luke's father with the redemption arc.
Not in the first one. I will say that even if you're just judging by the first movie, right?
Oh, he's still iconic.
They're like, all right, he's modeled after like these samurai warriors, right? Because he was what was the Final 7 or something? There was like a Kurosaki film that
Kurosawa?
Fuck. Yeah. That Lucas really loved.
Yeah.
And he sort of drew a lot of inspiration from that.
Was it the
Seven
Seven Samurai?
Seven Samurai. That's what it is. Yeah. I haven't seen it myself, but that's where like the lightsabers, the sword fights, and he has like this samurai mask sort of, and like his armor is all based on that. But then you go the route of like he's sleek, he's all black, and then you got the bright red. It's fucking cool.
Honestly, part of what makes him interesting, he's a sci-fi villain. He's really a fantasy villain. Darth Vader is like a necromancer. He is the evil wizard.
Yeah.
And they are going to rescue the princess from his castle, which is fucking Death Star.
I think science fantasy is my jam.
Yeah,
like,
it's really cool. So it's a blending for that particular villain. It's a blending of aesthetics. There's so much iconic about the way he sounds, the way he talks, his breathing is iconic. He's like a head taller than everybody else.
I hate science fantasy.
He chokes people he can just choke people on the spot. He is insanely scary.
You know what's funny? Okay, this is a testament. Not that you need to do, but a testament to how cool Darth Vader is current Marvel Studios. They're like, all right, people really like Thanos, but Thanos is dead, and then we brought him back 17 times in What If, and we kept killing him. We need a new villain. We're gonna go with Kang the Conqueror. And the first movie he shows up in, when he doesn't suck, he's just Darth Vader. Like, he uses the fucking force.
Yeah.
He's like threatening Ant-Man, like force choking his daughter. It's like, threatening? Sure. That's just Darth Vader, man.
Yeah.
He's just being Darth Vader. I was going to say this for the end. It might be more beneficial to talk about it now, and then we can kind of use it. I like to categorize things. That's how my brain works. I like to figure out the logistics of how underneath everything works. I've heard a lot of people say that like a good villain is one that has a morally good motive or a relatable motive, and it makes them do bad things. And I think there are a lot of villains that are like that, but there are a ton of great villains that don't have good motives. They're just shitty, horrible people, but you love to watch them, right? Like fucking Green Goblin, right? He's just awful, super entertaining. I think I figured out how to make a good villain. It goes like this. First, you have to understand there's not a single right way to do it. There are multiple ways. I think that these 5 traits tend to make a villain likable, and if you hit 2 or more of them, you have a good villain on your hands, okay? These are the 5 traits. Number 1, cool factor, aesthetic. if he just looks fucking cool and does cool shit, you're halfway there to a good villain, right? So the samurai aesthetic, the red lightsaber, that's super cool. Give me another great villain. Anybody.
A Doc Ock.
Doc Ock, immediately recognizable silhouette, right? The claws are fucking scary. He's very intelligent. There's a cool factor to that, right? Super simple. I think most good villains have a cool factor. Number 2, and again, you don't need all of these, just some of these. Number 2, pure evil, the audacity that makes you hate them, right? So like if a guy shows up and he just fucking kills the love interest, right? It's like, ooh, fuck that guy. I hate that guy. That makes a really good villain, right? Number 3, unique or interesting motivation or philosophy. So that's the one where most people are like, oh, if they're relatable, then that makes them good.
Right.
I specify unique or interesting because it doesn't have to be relatable to be interesting. You could be like, this guy's pure evil, but his philosophy is fascinating. Number 4, thematic dichotomy with the hero. So like if the hero, the protagonist, if they have to learn a lesson or they have to grow in some way and the villain represents the opposite worldview, that's cool. And I think that makes for a good story. And then the last one, and this is important, a proactive impact on the story. So a villain that just sits at the castle in the end and waits to be defeated tends to suck, right? So even Darth Vader, like you said, he's in his castle and he's got the princess, but like he's doing shit. He hops in the fucking
the Emperor is the one who kind of sits in his castle and doesn't do anything.
That's true.
Yeah.
But that's at the end of 3 movies, and there's also like half of the last movie is fighting him. But you're right. That is, I would say that's a weakness. But like when they don't have an active effect on the story, they're not proactive.
Yeah, let me like addressing that point. If the Emperor were the only villain in Star Wars,
Right.
If there were no prequels and he was the only main villain, it'd be like, this is weak. Having Darth Vader there too.
Yeah, because
means it's
Darth
fine.
Vader is the actual villain of Star Wars, not the Emperor.
Yes. He's also the protagonist of all of Star Wars.
Oh, true.
And it's actually really interesting because the Emperor retroactively is very proactive. In the prequels, he's fucking masterminding everything.
Right.
So
I think, for example, Darth Vader hits a lot of those. He's aesthetic. Originally, there is a pure evil and audacity about him. He's gonna kill a guy for being like, you're kind of dumb, you know? Thematic dichotomy all the way.
yeah, obviously.
Proactive impact on story. Darth Vader doesn't, I don't know if he has a unique motivation or philosophy or right out of the bag in the original trilogy.
He doesn't.
It's just evil.
And that's actually, I don't know if it's a weakness, but like Darth Vader's motivation in the original trilogy is kind of, even actually knowing more about him, we don't really know what it is. He's kind of a purposeless, drifting character. And that's actually part of his psyche. Like he's lost everything.
So just to be clear, I don't think you need all of these.
Yeah.
I think if you have at least 2, good villain.
Yeah, I think he hits 4 of the 5.
Yeah.
What is a villain that we think that hits all of them?
So I'm going to say this to Robbie, and I'm not saying it to you. So you're not allowed to listen
Push
to
his
this.
microphone away.
Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. You specifically asked, does anyone hit all 5? I think Zuko does. Okay? Do you disagree?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
I think first season Zuko maybe hits all 5.
Well, if he does at any point, that's fine.
Because the reason why is because Zuko isn't really a villain anymore after. Well, he sort of is. He's kind of an immoral. He's kind of in a gray area after the first season.
Well, that's the thing. He is a villain, and then I would describe him as an anti-hero, and then he becomes a hero.
Yeah.
Right. So like he is a villain at first, and that's just a redemption arc.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
like,
Because so I don't know if Zuko is that cool compared to Ozai, or Azula.
Okay.
You know.
I mean, obviously that's up to personal taste. I think Zuko is sick. He's got this crazy scar across his face. For the first couple episodes, you don't know why he has it. Shoots fire when he has to be secretive. He's also a sword master. He's the blue spirit.
Yeah.
And like he can beat people's ass without even using any fire. Right? Like he's super powerful. I think he's super cool. I think he has that originally. He softens a lot, but like he'll burn down your fucking village just so he can get one guy.
Yeah.
He has the audacity.
You've convinced me.
Okay.
You've convinced me.
Fantastic. I think is the whole idea behind honor and regaining it is a fantastic philosophy also. And then dichotomy with Aang, obviously. Yep.
Yeah, I don't have like points of what makes a good villain, but I sort of had a dichotomy between, and we've talked about this already, where you have the, quote unquote pure evil, or the really, really badass force of nature bad guy who, their motivations can be, any degree of understandable to completely incomprehensible. And then you have the villain, the like sympathetic villain. And so that was why it was interesting when you were talking about like a villain versus an anti-villain, because I think that's fundamentally the same concept. Because it's like you have a villain that's subverting sort of like the typical archetype. They're sort of subverting the archetype of a villain, just like how an anti-hero subverts, because the anti-hero is still the hero kind of. And so they're subverting the archetype of the hero.
Really,
and an anti-villain
really
is still a villain.
intentional subversions of things can be really interesting. So, for example, we talk about aesthetic. Looks really cool. Have either of you seen The Usual Suspects?
No.
There's a plot twist at the end of The Usual Suspects, spoiler alert, where the bad guy at the end is the dopey looking one who you think is pointless and meek. Or the Riddler. The Riddler's aesthetic, when you meet him, you're like, what?
Right.
There's like
right.
There's a reaction to, this guy looks really plain. I think that has a place, but only because I think it fits under the subversion of an aesthetic, and there's this kind of almost creepiness to a normal guy being a villain.
So
that only exists because of the aesthetic expectation.
I described aesthetic as cool factor, but you could very easily slot in scary factor, right? And if like instead of cool, right? If the villain is just scary.
I think their aesthetic needs to make you feel something.
Yeah.
Period. Full stop. And if surprise is one of those things, I think it can also work.
Well,
yeah.
Well, you're describing these guys that are like super meek looking, right? And then you find out they do these horrible atrocities. That's scary.
Okay.
I would describe that makes their appearance scary, even if it's not surface level.
I would
Does that make sense?
I would look at it more like they introduce cognitive dissonance, which is a kind of a feeling you get in your brain, and therefore their aesthetic introduces a feeling.
Okay.
Not necessarily scary, but
Fair enough.
So I was thinking of taking this a step further. So we've talked about, villains who do things for good or bad reasons, or villains. Mikey, you said that you think that it's even becoming kind of a played out thing that a villain like redeems themselves right before they like die or sacrifice themselves or something.
Yeah.
I wonder if we as like a culture are less comfortable with the idea of like a monolithic villain that's not redeemable. And so that sort of reflects itself in the in writing.
The issue is if you redeem them,
they die.
So,
without ever having the consequences of their actions.
So talking about like the culture of people that are watching these movies and TV shows, right? Or reading these books or whatever. People are not willing to accept a person who has done atrocities becoming a good person. For instance, if Star Wars came out today and Darth Vader became good at the end and he didn't die, and then you were like, all right, Darth Vader's a cool hero now. There's a large portion of people who would be like, I can't root for that guy.
Yeah.
He did genocide. That's not fun. I think that's why in the sequels they had to kill Kylo Ren. I think that's why they did.
Oh, okay.
Because that movie was the most like studio mandated corporate schlock ever.
Yeah.
And he's one of the most popular characters. They had to kill him because he did bad things, right?
Yeah.
And it's people are not like, it's okay. I feel like it's all or nothing. It's either they have to die or we never reference it.
I think what I meant is like in terms of like motivations. Like I don't know how many, like if you're talking about like mainstream fiction, I don't know how many villains there are that are like, inscrutable.
If you have this monolithic evil villain that is a person who interacts with people, that is a little harder to digest, right? If they don't actually have a motivation. Something close, and this is another person who hits all five, originally would have been the Joker. Because the Joker hits aesthetic, pure evil, unique motivation / philosophy, thematic dichotomy, problematic impact on story. He in the kind of the beginning of the Dark Knight, he kind of starts to hit that, and that's part of what makes him uncomfortable. Is like, dude, what does this guy want?
Yeah, I think one of the really clever things is how he has that backstory that changes.
Yeah.
Because the first time it's like, oh my gosh, that's really fucked up, and there's almost like a sympathetic moment. It's like, no, he was just fucking with you.
Yes.
And he's actually like, he's fucking with everything, including like the idea of like having any sort of like sympathetic connection with him. for
Yeah.
any,
Well,
like,
he's
reason.
one, the fact that you end up not knowing what his real backstory is makes him scarier. Two, he's like using that almost to proselytize.
Right.
Because every time he talks to somebody, he's like, I had a bad day and it made me crazy. And he wants other people to be bad and to do bad things. And so by constantly telling the people he interacts with that, like, if bad things happen to you, you will eventually snap.
Mhm.
He's like trying to get into the consciousness, like, you're gonna snap. You should snap. Poke the bear. You know what I mean?
We don't really know what Joker's like ultimate plan was. Like ultimate. Like, okay, if those two ships blew each other up, then what?
First of all, assuming that he has some grand master plan to like topple the world governments. I don't think you were, but like,
No.
I think if he got those ships to blow each other up, that would be such a ballooning of his own ego. Like, I was right. I proved my point. I won. You lost. Gotham lost. Batman lost. I don't care what happens now.
So this is the thing about the Joker. Think about the things the things that like the Joker does in the Dark Knight, for example. So we've got the boats at the end, which is like the climax, right? We have when he burns all the money and he's like, it's not about the money, it's about sending a message.
Yeah.
You know, you have the phone inside of the prisoner.
Yes.
You know, so you're smiling as you're saying that because that's the thing about the Joker is to him, this is just like, you know, a really, really elaborate like comedy routine. And all of the really like evil things that he does, they come off, they have this sort of like twisted like comedy to them.
Yeah, that's the audacity element
And-
to it.
and
the Joker in
so-
the Dark Knight is actually funny.
He's actually funny, but also, so you guys were talking about like, what would the Joker plan on doing then? Or like, he will have proved his point, but it's like, he's sort of kind of proving this point of nihilism, but also he's deriving enjoyment from the fact that you're trying to figure out why he would do it. And the reason why is fuck you.
You haven't seen the menu, right?
Not yet.
Okay, I won't spoil it. But similar to that and Better Call Saul, when characters do bad things in a lot of forms of media, but specifically those, they're because they're usually based on serving their own ego, making themselves feel good about themselves, there's an artistry to it. So
Okay.
in Better Call Saul, he's a con man who is also a lawyer. So his whole thing is setting up elaborate, it's almost like Nathan for you. Like he constantly tricks people into getting his ideal outcomes. He super not legally, but also he can make money and so people can do what he wants. But there's always a little flair to it. He always
Yes.
has to like, because it's an art.
Yeah.
Every person has in them a little bit of ego in whatever their craft or their job is, right?
Yes.
And usually that's expressed in a healthy way. But with a villain, that's still the case. So the Joker, yeah, he has like a grand plan and how he wants society to change, but like he's a comedian. So it has to be funny because
Yeah.
that's his little touch. That makes it his plan and not fucking Anarchy's plan or some other, you know, D-list Batman villain.
The point that I was trying to make earlier is that I don't think that the Joker even had like a plan in terms of like ultimately wanting society to change in a certain way or something, because that was my initial reaction to, you know, if the bit with the boats like actually worked how he wanted it to, what would he do next? And it's like, he probably had another bit planned. Like, it's like, what happens when, you know, when the audience laughs really hard at your joke and you kill, you know, this one bit. You just move on to the next one. And so I think it's not like the Joker, it's just like he keeps doing the comedy show until he gets caught.
Yeah,
and then he, you know.
And then the other side of it is he even tells Batman, I think you and I are destined to do this forever. Right? So he doesn't plan on stopping.
And honestly, I think it's the same thing in like the movie The Joker, except you obviously have a very sympathetic Joker.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing where he induces that riot and then he's like standing on top of the car and like taking a bow or something. And it's like all the world's a stage, Shakespearean thing where he just sort of like loses touch with the idea that like consequences are actually real, and it's just, this is all just,
So one thing I'd like to comment on, I think it's a pretty common opinion, and we've talked about this a little bit, is that a good villain is one with a relatable motivation. You said specifically when the villain is objectively right. I like it, which is big surprise here, when a villain is objectively completely wrong, like super evil, like they're obviously wrong, but the things that they're tempted to do and actually do are things, or at least related to things I am also tempted to do. Because it scratches this weird itch, not because I like, oh, I want to be a villain myself, but it sort of validates negative desires and perceptions that we have without condoning them.
Oh.
Because it's like, this is a human thing to want to do this. I got a lot of this with, so I think the best example is, for me at least, is Walter White from Breaking Bad. He's a fucking horrible person, right? Mm-hmm. But the way that he's horrible, he has this intellectual toxic masculinity. He's got to be the smartest guy in the room. Mm-hmm. And when you make him look stupid, he will get very pissed. He will ruin your life. He will try to kill you. Like XYZ, whatever. But like when you watch him do that, one, he's the protagonist, even though he's a villain. So you're like cheering for him that way. But it's also like, damn, I know exactly what that feels like.
Yeah.
When somebody makes me look stupid, it's like, I want to fucking get him back too. Right? Like I'm familiar with that. Now, because I'm a mature adult and I've been to therapy, I've recognized when that happens and be like, I should probably not indulge that. That's not cool. I should try to be a little humble.
Yeah.
But I love when villains have flaws that I have.
There is a movie. I haven't seen it, but I know the plot. It's about a guy who is currently, I think he's going through a divorce. He's maybe about to lose custody of his daughter, and he's in LA traffic, and his
Falling
AC
down.
goes out. And it follows him the whole time, and he just pulls like semi-automatic guns out of the back of his car and just goes on a fucking murderous rampage, killing whoever annoys him.
Huh.
That's
And
Falling
at the
Down,
very
right?
end of I don't know what the title of the movie.
I think it's Falling Down. Yeah.
At the very end of the movie, right before he dies, he goes, "Oh shit, I'm the bad guy," and then gets killed. But the whole, like, for most of the movie, it's like a comedy. He's the good guy.
Huh.
And it's just the most indulgent, like, everyone who's ever kind of cut you off kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. That is another type of relatable villain. So when we're talking about the idea of like villains that we can understand or villains that we empathize with, I think it's a form of relating to the villain. And this is like villains where the level that you relate to them is like this like base, like, letting your
worst
out,
impulses.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other side is that on that same level, because you can relate to them, it's scarier.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone has encountered that person that in traffic just loses their shit randomly. And so the like, oh, that person like to some extent exists, maybe not to that level, but like that you could be driving next to them. That element of it adds, I think, some fear to it.
I really wish you guys have seen Fargo, because season 1 and season 3 have like maybe 2 of my like favorite villains ever. So season 1, I'll give like basically a really quick overview. So Fargo is this kind of like anthology where all of the stories take place like around like Minnesota in some like small town. And usually there's like some sort of cop hero that is trying to get to the bottom of some sort of mystery, and it usually involves, like a bunch of like organized crime and stuff, and they're kind of sort of unraveling this conspiracy. Meanwhile, there's just like an ordinary person that is one of the other protagonists that has kind of gotten swept up in this, and they basically, kind of turn into one of the villains by the end of the season.
Huh. Okay.
And so it's really interesting because you have kind of like these two polarities where you usually have like a good guy who's like the police officer or detective or whatever. You have a bad guy who's like a villain. And then you have a person who's sort of like getting pulled into one of these sort of like gravity wells of good or evil, basically. Season 1, the villain's name is Malvo. He's played by Billy Bob Thornton, who's like this like really like scrawny actor, but he's just like this absolute like, you know, he's just like pure evil because he is an assassin for the mob. And for fun, there's this random guy that he sees in the hospital who, so basically for fun, he gets this guy to murder his wife. He manipulates this random guy into murdering his wife.
Shit. Okay.
Yeah. Just for fun. He has like this really good monologue where he's like, in order to get your wife to love you again, you need to show her that like you're still an ape where it counts, and you'll fuck shit up if need be. And then he sort of uses that advice and ends up getting angry at his wife and killing her. And that's sort of like the, like, you know, he's giving him this pep talk that's like this sort of toxic masculinity, homicidal pep talk where it's like, you need to believe in yourself, but the way that you're believing yourself is, you know, I'll kill you if I need to.
You know what that makes me think of is another fantastic villain who does the same thing. Kingpin in season 3 of Daredevil, because so much of that season is about Bullseye, right?
Yeah.
And he's getting pulled back and forth between like, maybe I'll settle down and stop being evil, and Kingpin gives him like this pep talk about like how he could be great and how he was great the day that he like killed his what was it, baseball coach or something? I don't remember exactly, but like I remember those talks, and it's like, oh shit, he's saying all the right things right now to turn this guy into a monster, and it works, and that's just one of the powers of Kingpin. He's just good at manipulating people, even without all his money.
And so this is a thing that I think is inherent to the idea of like heroes versus villains, because you're putting like a value judgment on the good guy and the bad guy. So one of the things that we've talked about is like villains that make you question like who's really the good guy or the bad guy. But that made me think, when I was thinking about like what I wanted to talk about on this episode, you know, people talk about like moral relativism, where it's like, is this person good or evil on some like objective level? And I think that like sort of independent of that conversation, there's everybody's sort of like subjective, there's that saying that everybody's the hero of their own story. And so usually I think like, I don't know if we've said it here, but like, I feel like a good villain is usually like they think that they're the hero of their own story, where it's kind of like, you know, the guy in Falling Down at the end, he realizes like, oh, I'm the bad guy.
I would expand that. A good character is the hero of their own story.
Yeah. Because that the character needs something to drive them forward, or else they're not a good character because they're just kind of aimless.
I don't think a villain needs to believe they're good. A villain can know he's an asshole. Right?
Okay,
like,
so villain knows that they're an asshole, but they're still the hero of their own story. So when you were talking about a villain that like that, so like how Walter White from Breaking Bad, I haven't seen Breaking Bad, but you talked about like he makes somebody look stupid. He will like try to kill them.
More or less.
He's redeeming himself because he's, you know, the hero of his own story, and he probably recognizes that he's an asshole. And you've probably met people like this where they're like, yeah, I'm an asshole, but you know, I have some sort of excuse for it, right? That's what when I think it comes down to with villains is like, even if they're like someone that you like empathize with, I think that what makes them a villain is that it's like, maybe Firelord Ozai, you know, had a really shitty childhood or something, and maybe, you know, if he went to enough therapy, he could become a good person. But it's like, by the time that you do that, you're gonna kill all these people, and so you need to be stopped. And so the villain, like regardless of how empathetic or not empathetic they are, it's like you need to be stopped, and that's
Okay, so there's actually, this is someone we've all seen, so we can all talk about this. Omni-Man from Invincible. He's very much the hero of his own story. Because from his perspective, he's like, look, we live for 10,000, 100,000 years. We're going to outlive all these people. They are like ants to us. So it doesn't matter if I kill them or whatever. It's not important. What's important is sharing our vast wealth and technology. And Mark's like, dude, what the fuck? That's not cool. Actually, don't do that.
Something that can make someone a truly gripping character and or hero is, okay, we talk about a villain. a villain believes they're the protagonist of their own story is that kind of tug on their consciousness that makes them go, maybe I'm not. And I think for Omni-Man, there's this, he has a wife, he has a kid, he doesn't talk to them about what he's doing. He pretends he doesn't care about them. And then he has this monologue at the end with Mark where he's like, he goes in this whole thing, telling Mark of all these great reasons why this is stupid, and in 10,000 years you won't have any of these people, and why does it matter? Why does it matter? What'll you have? And he goes, I'll have you, Dad. And it
shatters everything.
Yeah. Breaks it. Mm-hmm. I think so many villains, I think we love seeing them kind of erect this tower of defense around like why I'm actually right. And so much of that structure is so interesting. And the Joker being like, I'm not a bad guy, I'm just ahead of the curve. Is so interesting. And I think it's even more interesting in the same way that we love like seeing a hero get built up and then fall and then rise back up, is watching that structure get torn down is so satisfying for a villain.
Yeah.
Seeing the moment when a villain realizes I'm wrong, and seeing a villain get proved wrong and actually almost like be convinced by a rational argument. Like there's that satisfaction of it, but watching that structure get torn down and how a villain reacts to it is very, very interesting. And I think that was fascinating in Omni-Man because for 20 minutes, he just is doing these horrible, awful things that are so like horrifying, but that hit every single one of those 5 points. The aesthetic, he's just killing people with Mark, the pure evilness of it, the unique motivation of I have there's 10,000 years you're not going to have anything, the thematic dichotomy between him and Mark, obviously it's just all about him. It's the piece of proactive impact. He is the episode, and Mark says one thing. Yeah. And it just, everything you've seen, it just tears down instantly. And it's so emotionally satisfying and like viscerally satisfying and emotional and cathartic.
It's super cathartic. It also plays on like the David Goliath idea, right? Like it's just like you were saying, like 20 minutes of constant, this is why I'm right. And then the one little pebble.
It's something so small. It's, but like it just kind of brings him down.
But that's only, I feel like that
basic character.
It wouldn't have worked at all if you didn't also get scenes in there where he's like when he's playing, little Mark is playing baseball.
Yeah.
Right. And it shows him Omni-Man softening just a little bit, right? That's important.
Yeah.
If you just had all that, but you never got any of those moments, it wouldn't.
You need to have the understanding of Omni-Man's kind of fucking evil, but also we have these moments of there is a genuine father-son relationship there, and both of them are developing, and one of them is developing in a positive direction, and then the other one we see he's kind of developing in contrast to his character arc as a villain. And normally you kind of see someone like an Anakin character, you see things pulling them away to the light, but there's like this almost dramatic irony of like, they're not going to make it. And that's kind of a lot of villains. That tends to be what happens a lot of the time. Or like Jinx in Arcane. Like there's these moments of Vi trying to bring her back and almost succeeding. But to see someone after all of that horrible stuff happened just succeed. And like the hero, this is sort of the weird thing. Invincible has a fucking bleak ending in that season. Invincible beats Omni-Man. Yeah, doesn't seem that way. He beats Omni-Man. He won because Omni-Man wasn't trying to win a fight. He was trying to convince Mark, and he lost.
That's the great thing about that show that most people they're like, Omni-Man means Invincible is the evil Superman trope, and they're totally wrong because Invincible is the Superman of his world.
Yeah.
Omni-Man is effectively like the Zod type character. And so it's Mark's victory. And obviously he got like giga traumatized.
He doesn't know it. He doesn't feel like it.
Right. But it's Mark's victory. Yeah, that's super important. Now, on the flip side, another villain that I really like, and I think you guys would agree is a good villain. I don't know if you like him as much. Homelander, who falls in the same category of evil Superman, right?
Sure.
We've talked about this before. I think I've said Homelander's really cool. And you responded, Homelander is pathetic. And I was like, yeah, but he's still cool. And what I meant by that is he has a fucking cool aesthetic, like draped in the American flag. You know what I mean? He's like the picture, like if you took our army and squished it into one person. That would be what Homelander is, right? And obviously the powers of Superman are cool. In a villain, aesthetically, I think he's cool. I also think he's incredibly pathetic. He's same deal as like Walter White. He's this super fragile, huge ego, right? And you poke him and he just deflates. And that deflation just happens to be lashing out and murdering people and being horrible.
Yeah.
But I think that is why I like him so much as a villain. Is that he is ultimately a dichotomy in and of himself, right? He's supremely powerful, but supremely fragile.
Yeah, he's definitely sort of what we talked about with Ozai, like a character that could fall under the category of take away his powers and put him in therapy for like 2 years, and he's probably not a villain anymore.
Be a lot more than 2 years.
Yeah, a lot more than 2 years. But like he genuinely could, like he's just got issues.
Yeah.
I wonder if like I'm like thinking about this from like a fundamentally different way than you guys are. Because I had that whole rant about like villains being sympathetic, and it's like, you know, whether or not they're sympathetic, like they're powerful enough and they have the capacity to cause enough harm that they need to be put down, right?
Yeah.
I was literally thinking about that in terms of like a lot of times when I'm like watching a movie or watching a TV show, and it's like, shit, if I was in the hero's spot, would I like have it in me to like kill Homelander? And I was thinking about it in terms of like, you know, is this villain evil enough to justify like, you know, like me killing them or something, if I'm like imagining myself as the hero. So Homelander didn't choose any of the like the situations that he ended up in. Like he turned into a horrible person, but like he was not really, you know, he had so much shit like happen to him that was not in his control.
I actually look at Homelander in a similar way of Darth Vader, of like Homelander is a villain that got made because he's someone with superhuman powers put in like a massively authoritative position, which would try anyone, because absolute power like super, I wouldn't say corrupts, but I would say it makes you more of your basest impulse. And he was locked in a room as a kid with no physical affection.
Yeah, which would, yeah.
And so there is that sympathy element of like, he seems the most unrelatable person ever. He's a super, super powerful individual who just kind of kills because he wants to. But at the same time, it comes from a place of such utmost fragility.
Yeah, he fundamentally like he has like attachment trauma, literally, because he didn't get enough physical affection as a baby.
His weird fetishes are all about his mother figure, because he didn't have a mother.
Exactly.
He was a test tube baby.
And so Homelander, he literally didn't get enough like physical affection as a child.
Yeah,
right. Like a feral child.
Yeah.
So it's I think it comes to, like you said, the villain that was made, and it's like, okay, well, that goes back to like the very fundamental question of like, to what extent do we actually choose who we end up being, and to what extent are we just like products of our environment, right? And I feel like, I mean, do you ever like think about that when you think about a villain? I think that would be the first thing to
yeah. So the nature versus nurture argument is usually most poignant when you have a nurture setting that makes a villain, right? Turns a person into a horrible monster, and then that same setting happens to our hero and they don't become evil, right? Because it's disproving that it's something that a bad existence can turn you into a bad person. What's harder to disprove is the nature one. I mean, inherently, we're like, yeah, no, you're not a bad person because of your genetics or whatever.
There is an interesting book, and it's literally just about this woman has a kid, and it's just bad.
That is a thing. So antisocial personality disorder is a thing. They're called nightmare children. And it's just like they are evil, quote unquote. Like they just, everything they do is antisocial. It is by design. I don't know. I'm not a fucking brain doctor. I don't know shit about it. But like I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and a lot of like serial killers and stuff. They have that, and it's just it's a mental disorder where you are evil. You fucking don't care about people, and you use them for your own pleasure. You know, usually that
Is it
involves
treatable?
ending them.
I
don't
don't
know.
believe. I think
So-
stuff that's like narcissistic personality, like personality disorders in general, are really hard to treat. I think.
So I'm not speaking from any knowledge or experience. Isn't Jeffrey Dahmer like a born again Christian now? And he's like, yeah, I was really fucked up. I'm super
I
sorry.
thought
for
Jeffrey
that."
Dahmer like is dead. Is he still alive?
No, he was in prison.
Okay.
Did he die recently?
He died in 1994.
Really?
Yeah.
Did he like fucking, I could have sworn he had like a whole,
He was beaten to death by a fellow inmate.
that sounds right. How long was he in prison? Now I need to Google this.
He actually he did become a born again Christian.
There we
You're
go.
correct.
Yeah. 2 years before he died, I guess. And so that's
He
not,
turned into a different kind of.
So this is
cannibal.
actually fascinating. He didn't think that there was a God to be accountable to, so what was the point of trying to modify his behavior? And then later on, he had a question. He questioned to this priest who baptized him whether he was sinning against God by continuing to be alive because of how evil he was.
huh.
According to his family, when people were trying to kill him, he's just like, I don't care, because if I die, that is not a bad thing. That's something I deserve, and if that's what God chooses to have happen to me, then that's probably the
Interesting.
best for
It
the
is.
best. So that is fascinating, because otherwise I would have been like, okay, he said he was a born again Christian, but he just like, people were trying to kill him and he wouldn't try to stop them.
Well, that's not a mainline Christian belief of like life doesn't matter if you did bad things.
No, but at least like
It shows that
he was really at peace
yeah.
with it. And that's interesting. I don't know. This is from a Wikipedia article, right? So I don't have the full knowledge, but I think for a lot of villains, I think what we have really discovered today is that therapy is the protagonist.
Well, I think that that's a real thing. Like, I legitimately think that, like, through therapy, I've become a better person. And I think going back to the idea of, like, how comfortable we are culturally with villains being redeemed or not being redeemed, I think that one of the things that's just sort of, like, entered the zeitgeist is this idea of, like, you know, everybody just needs therapy. And I think to some extent that's true, because I think that evilness can be boiled down to, you know, a set of, you know, like somebody is just like incorrect in the way that their brain processes things, and that, you know, makes them, you know, make bad decisions and be evil. And, you know, theoretically, if you could correct that stuff within their mind, then they wouldn't be evil anymore. But it's like, what makes something like a hero and a villain is, it's like, if you're like in a fight with somebody, then it's like we can have like our reasons for like why we got into this fight, but to a certain extent it's kind of irrelevant, because right now we're just two people punching each other and one of us is going to win. And so to that extent, I think that the sort of like subjectiveness of like the hero is the person that you're rooting for. I think that is one of the things that makes like an interesting like hero and villain, where it's like,
Yeah, I think ultimately, and where I kind of had my epiphany moment, is I think it applies to the Joker too. I think it applies to Omni-Man, and I think in a way it applies to Vader as well, is that there's some like, not like a turning off of your brain when it comes to just like callously killing people, or like feel it, just being willing to let people die and not really thinking about it or realizing it or engaging the part of your brain that does process those things. Is that for most villains, there is this idea that as a villain, like you are bigger than everyone else, and everyone else around you is somehow smaller, right? Without actually realizing that in order for that to be the case, if you're a villain, you are actually the one who is smaller than everybody else.
Yeah. I think if you want to boil that down to like the absolute simplest terms, right? And even I think this ties into like the therapy would save the day thing, is to be a villain, you have to believe a lie and then act accordingly.
yeah.
You believe something to be true, and if this is true, then it's okay for me to steal or kill or whatever. And that is what makes you a
your
villain.
fundamental premise is incorrect.
Right.
Or you just don't really think at all.
Yeah, because of the premise. If the premise is true, then I don't have to worry about it. And the hero's job, if they don't just kill the villain, is to show them the lie is false. Like at its simplest, most basic level.
Think we've kind of nailed down what what I think a villain is, I guess.
Fantastic.
We did it.
We did it, guys. We did it. And I think to top off this villain-themed podcast, I wanted to pose both of you a question. All right?
Mm-hmm.
If you could commit one crime and you're absolutely certain you could get away with it, what crime would you commit? And don't say something lame that's actually moral. It's got to be evil because it's the villain episode.
Oh, that's actually like a crime?
Yeah.
Okay, my immediate crime was like steal and leak government documents.
Okay.
Steal and leak government documents on the fucking aliens they found.
That would be great. That would.
I don't know if that's the one I'd pick.
I feel like that's pretty moral. I mean, maybe not, but like you could make an argument for that being moral.
Dude.
Okay.
That's as close as I get. Don't put me on a watch list, please.
You're associated with me. It's going to happen. Robbie.
Murder.
All right, Mikey.
Tax evasion.
But fortunately for our viewers at home, none of us will commit these crimes because we are all in therapy and you should be too. Have a great week.
Ba-da-bow.
You got nothing.
Yeah, you can cut out the ba-da-bow.